Hi, my name is James Butler. Today we'll be discussing the implementation of ethical decision-making and values in clinical environment. What is ethics? Well, the Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy describes it as the study of concepts involved in practical reasoning, i.e. good, right, duty, obligation, etc. Similarly, the Ethics Centre, a non-for-profit ethical helpline, states that ethics aims to answer one big question: how do we live? They also state that we ask ethical questions whenever we think about how we should behave. It can be concluded that ethics is a guideline for moral compasses and helps us subjectively decide what is right and wrong. People make ethical decisions every day. Returning money to its owner after it falls out of their pocket, maintain a secret, even if it would hurt somebody else's feelings, and so on. In clinical and professional environments, it is a lot more important to maintain a strict code of ethics to ensure trust in our medical professionals and maintain the health and safety of all patients. Paramedics across the globe face tough ethical decisions every day. I'm not supposed to give more analgesia, but they're still in a serious amount of pain. They are refusing treatment, but they will die or get seriously ill without intervention. This person cannot understand the treatment that I'm providing them, therefore they don't have informed consent. Can I still act to help them? The list goes on. It is the duty of all paramedics to maintain an unbiased, objective, ethical, moral compass. However, as human beings, it is impossible for us alone to remain objective. Many governing bodies for healthcare in Australia release practice guidelines or competency standards that all professionals working in the field must adhere to. For example, the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia regularly release updates for their Code of Conduct for Nurses and Code of Conduct for Midwives, which outline the codes of practice registered nurses must follow as professionals. Similarly, Paramedics Australasia has released a series of competency standards for paramedics that provide guidance on professional behaviour and clinical practice. These guidelines are important in maintaining adequately competent paramedics and deciding retrospectively whether or not a paramedic performed best practice or they made a mistake. Now, the inquest into the death of Ruby Chen. The following information is taken directly from the coroner's report written by David McConnell, Central Coroner for Queensland. Ruby Ann Chen, or just Ruby from here on out, was a young girl from Blackwater, Queensland, just shy of 4 years old. She died at 8:40 p.m. on the 9th of the 8th, 2012 at Rockhampton Hospital from a massive air embolism. The events leading up to the circumstances of her death raised serious ethical concerns surrounding treatment of patients by paramedics. For some background, Ruby had been admitted to hospital with a fever and dehydration. The initial treatment was to provide and monitor fluid infusions at Blackwater Hospital. Hospital staff deemed it appropriate to have her airlifted to Rockhampton, where she could be better cared for. Before liftoff, the lead paramedic found that her current IV giving set would be too bulky and requested another for transit in the helicopter. The new giving set was respiked into the already depleted IV bag, which was thought to have had 300 ml remaining, but was calculated to have approximately 100 to 150 ml. During the flight, fluids recommenced in Ruby. Shortly before landing, Ruby began to rapidly deteriorate, presenting with convulsions. The lead paramedic began resuscitation efforts, and the pilot increased speed to land at the hospital as soon as possible. The transport team landed, and hospital staff aided in the resuscitation efforts before Ruby inevitably died. An autopsy showed evidence of approximately 70 mils of air surrounding Ruby's heart, arteries, and the veins superficial to her brain. Evidence discovered by the coroner through separate testimonies found that the only logical way the air could have entered her system was 1. The respiking of the IV bag, allowing air to enter it. 2. the placing of the bag in the required pressure container on the helicopter that forced fluid into Ruby's body. 3. As there wasn't as much fluid as initially thought, the air followed the fluid into Ruby's circulatory system and caused an embolism. The coroner concluded that either a fresh IV bag been used, a reduced rate of fluid administration been used, or the pressure bag in the helicopter was not used, Ruby would not have died. The most simple solution would have just been to use a fresh bag. But why didn't they? I will now discuss the ethical issues surrounding the withholding of resources or treatment for future patients over the patient in front of you. There are more ethical concerns raised by the lead paramedic's conduct in communication with hospital staff and his testimony to the coroner. But for the sake of the analysis, I'll be focusing on the resource management that inevitably killed Ruby. Obviously, there is an important ethical issue being raised here with the following arguments. 1. I've only got a set amount of resources. I need to ration them in case I don't have the chance to restock the helicopter. Or 2. I have a patient in front of me that needs my undivided attention to provide best practice for them. Following the principles of non-maleficence and beneficence, it would be more ethical of the hospital/recovery staff to use a fresh IV bag that will be only spiked once, so to avoid giving any air embolism and provide adequate fluid supply to Ruby. However, if we look at the consequentialist theory, it would have been more ethical to use all resources available before the reserve stock and save those to help the next patient, or even the next couple of patients, doing more good in the long run. In their unawareness, the paramedic did what he thought would have produced the most good, not knowing that it would cost someone their life. In retrospect, for the cost of a single IV bag, which was about $1 at the time, it would have been best practice and the most ethical decision to use their reserves for Ruby. After the incident, it was noted by the coroners that IV bags needed to be strictly mandated to a single spike only rule, so as to prevent what has happened to Ruby in the future. Such is the now commonly accepted Ruby's rule in Queensland medical practices. Now, though there were no documented side effects and consequences for the paramedics in question, this would have had serious effects on their careers and the careers of the other people associated. Thank you for listening to my presentation.